Hi again. So we're back and we're getting so much closer. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through how to take that upper boot and attach it to the base and the sole of the shoe. So this really kind of pulls it all together, and it's pretty easy to do, especially as you've done it a couple times, and depending on the type of vinyl or faux leather that you're working with and your method for getting that attached and folded over the shoe soles, depending on how you do that, it will get easier over time. So I'm going to show you my method here, and we'll be one step closer to having those boots all finished up. All right, let's jump on in and get started. All right, so we're backtracking a little bit in the pattern. I'm just gonna go over cutting out the vinyl for the base of the shoe. So we have our vinyl pieces. I have it flipped upside down as we showed earlier. And for this, we're simply going to trace around the pattern pieces and cut those out. And you'll repeat that for the second shoe. Then we're gonna go ahead and cut strips for the boot. We have 4 small 1/4 inch by 1 1/4 inch for that front lacing tab. And then we have 2 strips that are 3/8 inch wide by 7 inches to go up the back of the boot. Now that we have all of the pieces cut out, we're going to continue with just 1 shoe to complete the process. So we're picking up in the pattern at step 13 where we see this lower boot portion. We need to sew a straight stitch 1/4 inch from the bottom edge, so that's the larger curve. Once we have that stitched, we need to mark the center right at this curve. Then we're going to take this small center lacing tab, apply a piece of double-sided quilter's tape to the end on the inside, peel off the paper, fold it in half. Now remember, you need to be able to get a lace through that loop, so the double-sided quilter's tape should only be down at the end. Apply another piece of double-sided quilter's tape to the right side, which will be the outside of that lacing tab. And then you're going to peel off the paper and then place this center lacing tab right on this center line that you've previously marked. Then you're going to bring in the 2 upper sections of that boot. You're going to apply double-sided quilter's tape to the bottom edge of each piece. Peel off the paper. Then we're going to take those boot uppers. Remember, this is center front, this is center back. We're going to place those on this lower edge of the shoe, making sure that it lines up at center back and the overlap is about 1/4 inch. Then we'll bring in the tongue. If you haven't already, you'll trim down that to just 1/8 into that seam allowance. Then we're gonna apply the double-sided quilter's tape to that bottom where we didn't stitch. It does have the sharp corners, not the rounded edge. Then you'll remove the paper. And then using those marked lines, you're gonna center that tongue right side down, right on top of that center lacing tab. Then we're going to take this over to the machine and stitch the first row of top stitching just inside 1/4 inch from the edge, and we'll stitch that all the way around, being sure to catch all the layers. Then we're going to repeat the process as close to the edge as possible and do a second row of top stitching all the way around that inner edge of the lower portion of the shoe. And here you can see that second row of top stitching. And we'll just note that if you do have these center lacing tabs, you're going to want to carefully push them out of the way, or you might need to use a zipper foot to make sure that it doesn't push your stitching off. You can see ours pushed off a tiny bit right here, so those 2 rows are a little bit close together. Then we're going to take the shoe with right sides together, line up the center back seam and straight stitch right up that center back seam line. Once you have that stitched, you'll finger press that open, and then you can come in and carefully stitch that flat. Holding the shoe up, you can get your sewing machine presser foot right inside. Hold the seam allowance open and you could stitch this flat open across the bottom and the top just to help hold that in place. Then we're going to turn the boot right side out. So cute, it's coming together. Now we're gonna look at the back and apply that back heel strip. So again, we wanna have that seam allowance pressed open, and it's gonna be placed over the seam line and then folded over to the inside, matching down at the bottom. Now we're gonna top stitch this down on both sides as carefully as we can on the machine. And to do this, you're gonna wanna have the boot turned back inside out and stitch in from the bottom and probably stitch in from the top. The other option at this point is to do a smaller strip just up at the top, have it cover that seam, and then fold over to the inside. And you could even extend it a little bit so it gives you something to pull on when you're pulling the shoe on and off the doll. You can use the double-sided quilter's tape to hold that down, which will make this much easier to sew on under the machine. Then you'll turn that shoe right side out again. So there you can see the back, it's all stitched, so it is possible to stitch it. Again, you just want to stitch that up from the back, and you can see here where I have back stitched it on both sides. Now this is a contrasting thread, so it's pretty obvious where that connection happens. If you do this in a thread that's the same color as your vinyl, it would blend right in. And here we have this so far. It's looking adorable. So now we're gonna take the boot and attach it to the inner sole. So this one is that 6mm foam. You're gonna wanna make sure from your prior markings, if you haven't marked it, look at your pair and make sure that you have them in the right direction for each foot. They're mirrored. The toe point comes in at the highest point towards the center. So if we're to mark center back, and the arch is on this inside edge. So for this boot, for the first one, it's the same whole shoe for either side. So for the first one, you can pick either sole, and then on the other one, you're just gonna wanna make sure that, again, that it's a mirrored positioning, and if you put it in with the pencil markings up, or if you've put it in with the pencil markings down, you'll wanna do the same thing for the opposite shoe. Now, one thing that you might want to do, because you are going to need to fold all of these pieces over, and they will kind of start to overlap as they get positioned around the oval shape of the sole, you can take a tiny pair of scissors and just cut a few small slits, or even cut out little bits like little tiny notches, so that when it folds over, they kind of have a little bit more space to overlap. And I like to do that just around the back. The heel is where the most crowded space is, and you could do it a little bit on the toe. So we're gonna take the sole with the pencil markings spaced up so you can see them here. We also have the hot glue gun plugged in and ready to go. So we're just gonna position that inside here. The stitching line that we stitched is our marked line for where to fold that over the bottom of this foam. So you're gonna place the sole inside, and it should fit in pretty snugly, which is nice. So now we're gonna start by gluing the toe first. Just put a few dabs of glue here on the toe. You gotta work quickly because it will dry fast. So you can see I'm overlapping that vinyl slightly to create a nice curve here on the toe. So you can see that starting to take shape. Now we're going to move to the back, and we'll glue the heel And just hold that in place until it sets. That's a little bit thicker. It's a little bit harder to get that to fold over. Then you just want to make sure that you have that pushed down so that you're still folding along your stitch line, and you'll go ahead and glue down both of the sides. Now that this is glued all the way around the edge, you can see how that looks there. We're going to take a piece of the chipboard and it's going to be glued right on top of that. It's going to sandwich together to hold all the vinyl in place. I'm just pressing down from the inside with that shoe sole against the table so that it really sticks down. As the glue starts to come out, you can just peel that off if it comes out between the crack there. So you can see how that looks from the side. We have that glued down pretty good. Now if I want, I could squeeze in a little bit more glue where it starts to pull apart. But this will all be covered by the trim that goes around the outside. Then once you have the chipboard down, we're going to take the base foam piece. It's a 2mm piece. It's going to get glued right on top of the chipboard. If any of the glue starts to seep out between the crack, you can just wipe that off as it's starting to cool, but it's not hard all the way. Press it down to really get that to adhere nice and evenly. And there you can see we've got the bottom on. And you can see it from the side. Now we're going to take the piece of 1/4 inch flat elastic and wrap it around the edge of the shoe. We could use white. We could also use black to blend it all together really nicely. The Inspiration shoes have a white edged sole, so we're going to do that. We tried the Sharpie thing and honestly it didn't work. I thought maybe we could pull that off, but it's just too small of a piece to try to do that on. So we're just going to do the white elastic around the edge of the boot. So to do that, we're going to start at center back and have it meet up at center back. So I'm just going to dab some glue back here. Get this positioned down for the starting point, right at center back. Give it a minute to cool just so that it has something to hold on to so I can kind of pull it. The elastic does have some stretch in it and it looks better if it's pulled just a little bit so that it's smooth all the way around. Okay, so now we're going to start dabbing that glue right along this crack and along the chipboard. And then we can just lay that elastic right over the edge and just hold it in place for a minute and it will set. And you can just kind of smooth it out. And then just continue to do that all the way around the shoe. And then as we get towards the back, you can see we have quite a bit of excess and we can just trim that off to match. Dab in some extra glue just to make sure that back seam is adhered very nicely. Now that we have both shoes ready, the last step is just to lace them up. So we're gonna take 1/8 inch black elastic. This is cut 12 inches long, and I'm just gonna feed that through to lace up the boots. We wanna start at the center lacing tab, pull them up evenly, and then feed them back and forth through the 6 metal tabs. And then we're ready to try these on our doll. How cute are these boots? Seriously, these are so fun, so easy to put together, and so cute. And here's option number 2. They turned out so cute. A perfect match for our cute little ski jacket. And here's option number 3, the quilted boots. These, you guys, these are so adorable. I love how these turned out. So cute. The quilted detail just really gives it that authentic look. So on both of these second pairs, you can see that we used the black elastic around the bottom and black on the bottom. And then we've just laced them up with black laces. And I dabbed a little hot glue right on the end of that cording just to keep it from fraying. But it was pretty easy to do in either side of the lacing. And here's the original pair. You can see them tucked in with her cute little skinny jeans. So we've got the adorable sparkly ones, super cute fabric ones, and the really cute quilted detail on option number 3. So I hope this has inspired you to make a pair of Dorel boots for your own doll too.